Every night you experience one of the strangest disappearances in your life. You lie down, you close your eyes, you think one last thought, and then nothing. Not darkness you remember, not a clear switch, not a final second where you can say, "That was the moment I fell asleep." You simply wake up later with a missing piece in the middle. You can remember getting into bed. You can sometimes remember thinking. You can even remember trying to fall asleep, but you almost never remember the final second. So where did that moment go? At first, the answer seems easy. Maybe sleep is just a shutdown. Maybe the brain is awake for a while, then suddenly turns off, and the missing moment is missing because there was nothing left to record. But that picture is too simple. Your brain does not power down like a phone. It does not leave consciousness because it has stopped working. During sleep, the brain keeps changing, measuring, filtering, reacting, and sometimes dreaming. It moves through stages from light sleep to deeper sleep, and later into REM, where vivid dreams often appear. So the mystery is not that the brain becomes silent. The mystery is that the brain stays active. But the part of you that can say, "I am experiencing this," stops leaving a clean memory behind. To understand that, we have to separate two things that feel like one thing. Experiencing a moment is not the same as remembering it. You can live through something and fail to store it. You can hear a sound but not notice it. You can see a face in a crowd and forget it seconds later. You can walk into a room and lose the reason you came there. Memory is not a camera running in the background. It is a construction process, and construction takes cooperation. Your senses may collect information, but memory needs more than raw information. It needs attention to point at something. It needs the brain to decide that this moment belongs to your story. It needs enough stability to attach the moment to a before and an after. That is why you can lose tiny pieces of waking life too. You may read the same sentence 3 times and realize you did not absorb it. You may drive along a familiar road and remember almost nothing from the last few minutes. You may listen to someone speaking while your mind drifts somewhere else, and later the words feel like they passed through you without staying. You were there. Your ears and eyes were working, but the experience did not become a strong memory. Falling asleep takes that ordinary weakness and pushes it much further. First, your brain has to pay attention. Then it has to encode what happened. Then it has to connect that moment to a larger story of you, where you were, what you felt, what came before, what came after. When you are fully awake, this process can work smoothly, not perfectly, but well enough that life feels continuous. Falling asleep attacks that continuity from several directions at once. Your attention weakens. Your sense of the room fades. Your thoughts stop following ordinary logic, and the systems that normally turn experience into memory begin to change their job. This border is called sleep onset. It is not a clean line. It is a strange in-between zone where waking consciousness begins to loosen, but full sleep has not completely taken over. In sleep science, the first stage of non-REM sleep is often called N1. This is the lightest stage, the changeover from wakefulness to sleep. Your breathing and heartbeat begin to slow. Your muscles relax. Your brain waves start shifting away from the faster patterns of alert waking. But from the inside, it may not feel like sleep. That is why someone can wake you during this stage, and you might say, "I was still awake." Your brain may have already stepped into sleep before your conscious self has a clear way to report it. Here, the disappearing act begins. During sleep onset, consciousness does not usually vanish in one dramatic instant. It becomes unstable. A normal thought may bend into an image. A memory may turn into a scene. A sound in the room may become part of a half-dream. The logic of waking life starts to melt. You might be thinking about tomorrow. Then suddenly you are walking through a hallway that does not exist. You might hear a car outside. Then for a second, your brain treats it like thunder in a dream. You might see colors, faces, or flashes that are not really there in the room. These are hypnagogic experiences, the strange fragments that can appear as the brain passes into sleep. They are one reason falling asleep can feel so difficult to describe. It is not only darkness. It can be images, body sensations, drifting sounds, nonsense thoughts, or a sudden feeling that you are falling. Sometimes one of these fragments wakes you up, a body jerk, a flash, a weird sentence in your mind. And because you wake up immediately, you may remember it. But if you do not wake up, the fragment usually dissolves. Not because it never happened, because it was never stored strongly enough to become a stable memory. The brain needs a reliable narrator to make an experience part of your life story. At sleep onset, that narrator is getting weaker. Imagine trying to write down the exact moment ink disappears from a pen while you are still writing with it. The tool you need is failing during the event you are trying to record. That is close to the problem of remembering falling asleep. The systems that let you observe the transition are the same systems being transformed by the transition. You cannot step outside your own brain and watch it fall asleep from a safe distance. You are inside the change. Your awareness is not a witness standing beside the doorway. It is one of the things passing through. This also explains why trying to catch the moment rarely works. You lie still and think, "I will notice it this time." You wait for sleep like a hunter waiting for an animal. You check your mind. You ask, "Am I asleep yet?" But the act of checking keeps part of you awake. Attention is a little like a hand holding onto the edge of the pool. As long as you keep gripping, you have not fully drifted away. Then your focus finally loosens. The watcher gets tired. The question disappears, and by the time sleep arrives, the part that wanted to mark the moment is no longer sharp enough to mark it. Modern brain research suggests that the transition into sleep can include measurable tipping points in brain activity. So sleep onset may feel gradual in some ways, but the brain can still cross a real threshold. The problem is that your conscious self is not outside the threshold with a stopwatch. It changes with the threshold. That is why the final waking second is almost impossible to own. If you remember it clearly, it probably was not the final second. It was just one of the last moments before sleep. The true crossing is recognized only after the fact, and after the fact, you are already asleep. There is another twist. Sleep is deeply connected to memory, but not in the way people often imagine. Sleep can help the brain process and strengthen memories from waking life. During the night, the brain may replay, reorganize, and integrate information. In that sense, sleep is not the enemy of memory. But falling asleep is not the same as remembering what happened before sleep. A library can organize books after closing. That does not mean it records the exact second the lights went out. When sleep begins, the brain is preparing to enter a state where memory is handled differently. It may later work on memories from the day, but the live experience of the transition is poorly suited to becoming a neat autobiographical memory. It lacks a stable attention system. It lacks a clear before and after marker. It lacks the normal feeling of, "I am here, and this is happening to me." So the moment is not remembered because nothing important occurred. It is forgotten because the machinery of remembering was already being reconfigured. This is why sleep feels like time travel. You close your eyes at night, and subjectively, the next thing may be morning. Of course, your body did not skip those hours. Your brain traveled through cycles. Your heart kept beating. Your cells kept working. Your sleeping mind may have produced dreams you no longer recall, but the waking self was not continuously present to collect the story. In the morning, the brain gives you a clean version. I went to bed, I woke up. A simple line. But the real experience was not a line. It was a fade, a blur, a transformation, and then a return. And the strangest part is that this happens to almost everyone. Every night, the mind performs a quiet escape from itself. Not in a dramatic way, not like death, not like a blackout from injury, but as a natural, ordinary, biological surrender. You do not remember the moment you fall asleep because there may be no fully awake you left to save it. The observer fades with the event. The recorder changes state while the recording is being made. The final thought does not get a timestamp because the clock that belongs to consciousness is already losing its hands. So the missing moment is not empty. It is not proof that the brain turned off. It is the border where waking awareness becomes too soft to hold itself. Every night you approach that border on purpose. You turn off the lights. You lie still. You let the world become less demanding, and without noticing the exact instant, you allow the most familiar version of yourself to disappear. Then, hours later, you come back. You open your eyes. You remember the bed. You remember the room. Maybe you remember a dream, but you do not remember leaving. And maybe that is the deepest mystery of sleep. Not that we spend a third of life unconscious, but that we enter it willingly every night through a doorway we can never quite remember crossing.